The July heat was stifling in Kansas City as Travis Kelce pulled into the parking lot of Elite Motors, one of the most exclusive luxury car dealerships in the metropolitan area. After another championship season with the Kansas City Chiefs and a well-deserved off-season break, Travis had decided it was time to treat himself to something special. Despite his fame and fortune, Travis remained remarkably down-to-earth. When he wasn't on the football field commanding attention in his Chiefs uniform, he preferred to keep things low-key. Today was no different. He wore a simple gray hoodie, faded jeans with a few rips, and his favorite pair of worn Nike sneakers. No designer clothes, no flashy jewelry, just a regular guy looking to buy a car. He hadn't called ahead or scheduled an appointment. Travis wanted the authentic experience of shopping for a car like any other customer. As he walked through the gleaming glass doors of Elite Motors, the cool air conditioning hit him like a refreshing wave, a stark contrast to the oppressive Missouri summer heat outside. The showroom was impressive. Polished marble floors reflected the overhead lighting, and the scent of new leather and premium car wax filled the air. Luxury vehicles were positioned throughout the spacious area like works of art. A sleek Lamborghini Huracan, a pristine Bentley Continental GT, and in the center, a massive Cadillac Escalade that caught Travis's eye immediately. The dealership was relatively quiet a Tuesday afternoon. A few salespeople in crisp suits were attending to well-dressed clients at the far end of the showroom, their voices a low murmur of negotiation and discussion. Travis began walking among the vehicles, genuinely impressed by the quality and selection. From his glass-walled office overlooking the showroom floor, Richard Morrison watched the young man who had just entered. At 52 years old, Richard had been the general manager of Elite Motors for over 15 years. He prided himself on his ability to read, to distinguish between serious buyers and mere browsers who had no intention of making a purchase. Richard had built his reputation on catering to Kansas City's elite, successful business owners, local celebrities, professional athletes, and old money families who could afford six-figure vehicles without batting an eye. His dealership consistently ranked among the top luxury car sellers in the Midwest, and he wasn't about to let that slip. Looking at the young man in the hoodie and ripped jeans, Richard immediately categorized him as a time waster. Another kid probably wanting to take selfies with expensive cars for social media, he thought dismissively. The casual dress, the way the young man walked with his hands in his pocket, everything screamed, not a serious customer. Richard had implemented an unwritten policy at his dealership. Don't waste time on people who clearly couldn't afford the vehicles they were selling. While weekends were more lenient for browsers and dreamers, weekdays were for serious business. Every minute counted when you were trying to move inventory worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Seeing that none of his sales staff had approached the young man, Richard decided to handle the situation himself. He straightened his expensive Italian tie, adjusted his Rolex, and walked purposefully onto the showroom floor. Travis was bent over the hood of a cherry-red Ferrari 488 GTB, genuinely fascinated by the engineering visible through the rear glass panel. The craftsmanship was incredible, and he found himself imagining what it would feel like to drive such a machine on an open highway. "Can I help you with something?" Richard asked, his tone carrying an unmistakable hint of skepticism. His eyes quickly scanned Travis from head to toe, lingering disapprovingly on the worn sneakers and the holes in his jeans. "Yeah, actually," Travis replied with his characteristic friendly smile. "I'm interested in that Escalade over there." He pointed toward the black luxury SUV positioned on the central platform, "and maybe looking at some other options too." Richard's smile was condescending, the kind reserved for children asking for candy they couldn't afford. He'd heard similar requests countless times from young men who barely had enough money for gas, let alone a vehicle that cost more than most people's houses. "Of course you are," Richard replied, with barely concealed sarcasm. "And I suppose you're also interested in the McLaren in the corner?" He gestured toward the bright orange supercar with a starting price north of $300,000. Travis blinked, taken aback by the response. He wasn't accustomed to such treatment outside of opposing team stadium. In the Chiefs' locker room and around Kansas City, people generally treated him with respect, regardless of how he was dressed. "Look, I'm seriously interested in making a purchase," Travis said politely, maintaining his composure. "Could we maybe take a look at the Escalade and discuss pricing?" Richard let out a laugh that was loud enough to attract attention from other customers and sales staff across the showroom. "You? Afford an $85,000 vehicle? Come on, kid. What did you do? Win the lottery? Sell your grandmother's jewelry? The comment had an ugly undertone that made Travis's jaw tighten slightly. He was familiar with assumptions people made based on appearance, but he'd hoped that in 2023, especially in an upscale business establishment, such blatant prejudice would be less common. "My name is Travis Kelce," he said finally, hoping his name would provide sufficient explanation and perhaps reset the conversation. Richard squinted slightly. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but he couldn't place it. He wasn't much of a sports fan. His passions were luxury automobiles and golf. Professional football rarely crossed his radar. "I don't care what your name is," Richard said dismissively. "What I care about is serving serious customers, not kids who come in here to waste my time dreaming about cars they'll never be able to afford. I'm going to have to ask you to leave now." His tone had become more authoritative, and several other employees were now watching the interaction with visible discomfort. None of them dared to contradict their boss, though a few exchanged uncertain glances. One of the saleswomen, Jennifer Martinez, was frowning. Something about the young man seemed familiar, but she couldn't quite place where she'd seen him before. There was something about his confident demeanor and the way he carried himself that suggested he wasn't just some random person off the street. Travis, visibly frustrated but maintaining his dignity, pulled out his smartphone. "Look, I can call my financial advisor right now and have him verify my ability to purchase any vehicle in this showroom," he offered reasonably. "Your financial advisor?" Richard scoffed. "What are you, some kind of TikTok influencer? Don't waste any more of my time. If you don't leave immediately, I'll escort you out myself." Without further discussion, Richard placed his hand on Travis's arm and began guiding him toward the exit. Some customers were now openly staring at the scene, while others pretended not to notice the embarrassing situation unfolding before them. Travis didn't resist physically, but his mind was racing. He'd never experienced such blatant discrimination, especially not when he was simply trying to make a legitimate purchase. As they approached the glass doors, he could feel the eyes of everyone in the showroom. "Wait, Mr. Morrison!" Jennifer suddenly called out, hurrying toward them just as they reached the entrance. "That's Travis Kelce, the Kansas City Chiefs tight end." Richard stopped abruptly, his hand still gripping Travis's arm. His expression shifted from irritation to confusion as Jennifer's words registered. "He's one of the biggest stars in the NFL," Jennifer explained breathlessly. "My husband watches every Chiefs game. Travis just won another Super Bowl championship. He's one of the highest-paid players in the league." The color drained from Richard's face as he slowly released Travis's arm. The information hit him like a cold slap of reality. He vaguely remembered seeing headlines about the Chiefs' championship run and some news coverage about their star players. How had he not recognized one of the most famous athletes in Kansas City? The realization of his catastrophic mistake began to sink in as other employees and customers started murmuring among themselves, some already pulling out their phones to capture the moment. The damage was done, but the real consequences were just beginning to unfold. The silence that followed Jennifer's revelations deafened. Travis stood there, adjusting his hoodie with remarkable composure, while Richard Morrison's face went through a rapid transformation from confusion to horror to desperate damage control. I'm so sorry, Mr. Kelce," Richard stammered, finally releasing Travis's arm completely. "I didn't recognize you. This is a complete misunderstanding." Travis looked at the manager with a mixture of disappointment and dignity that spoke volumes about his character. Despite being one of the most recognizable athletes in Kansas City, he had been judged solely on his appearance and treated with shocking disrespect. "No misunderstanding here," Travis replied calmly, his voice carrying the same confidence he displayed on the football field. "You made it very clear how you treat customers based on how they look rather than who they are or what they might be capable of purchasing." By now, a small crowd had gathered. Other customers in the showroom had recognized the commotion and were discreetly recording with their smartphone. Jennifer Martinez, the saleswoman who had identified Travis, looked mortified on behalf of her employer. "Mr. Kelce, please," Richard continued desperately, sweat beginning to form on his forehead despite the air conditioning. "Let me show you around personally. We have some incredible vehicles that would be perfect for someone of your status." The word status hung in the air awkward. Travis raised an eyebrow at the sudden change in treatment. The exact same status. that had been completely invisible to Richard just moments earlier when it was hidden beneath casual clothes. "You know what's interesting?" Travis said, his tone remaining remarkably level. "5 minutes ago, you were convinced I couldn't afford an $85,000 escort. Now that you know I play football, suddenly I have status? What exactly changed besides your perception?" Richard was sweating profusely now, fully aware that this situation was spiraling beyond his control. Around the showroom, he could see customers whispering among themselves, some shaking their heads in obvious disapproval of what they had witnessed. We pride ourselves on excellent customer service," Richard tried weakly. "Perhaps we could start over. I could show you our premium inventory, discuss financing options." "I think I'll be taking my business elsewhere," Travis said, maintaining his dignity even in this awkward situation. "Somewhere that treats all customers with respect, regardless of whether they recognize them or not." As Travis turned to leave, something happened that Richard couldn't have anticipated. Several customers who had witnessed the interaction began applauding. It started with one person, then spread throughout the showroom. A slow clap that grew into genuine applause for Travis's graceful handling of an ugly situation. "Good for you, man," called out an elderly gentleman in an expensive suit who had been browsing a Porsche. "Class act all the way." A young woman near the Bentley display added, "That was completely unacceptable. You handled that with more dignity than he deserved." Travis nodded appreciatively to the supporters and walked toward the exit with his head held high. But as he reached the door, Jennifer Martinez caught up with him. "Mr. Kelce, please wait," she said urgently. "I'm so incredibly sorry about what just happened. This doesn't represent who we are as a company. Mr. Morrison made a terrible mistake." Travis paused, looking back at her with genuine kindness. "You seem like a good person, Jennifer. The problem isn't just your boss. It's a system that judges people based on appearance rather than character. I hope things change." Outside the dealership, word of Travis's presence had somehow spread. A small group of Chiefs fans had gathered, having spotted his distinctive pickup truck in the parking lot. They wanted autographs and selfies, creating a stark contrast to the treatment he had just received inside. "Travis, can you sign my jersey?" called out a young boy wearing a Chiefs number 87 jersey. "Of course, buddy," Travis replied warmly, spending several minutes with the fans who had gathered. The difference between the respect and admiration shown by these fans versus the discrimination he had experienced inside the dealership couldn't have been more pronounced. Meanwhile, inside Elite Motors, Richard was trying desperately to contain the damage. Several customers had already left, clearly disgusted by what they had witnessed. Others were questioning whether they wanted to do business with an establishment that treated people so poorly. "Mr. Morrison," Jennifer said as she returned from the parking lot, "we need to talk. What just happened was wrong on so many levels. Travis Kelce is not just a famous athlete. He's a genuinely good person who was trying to spend his money here, and you humiliated him based on nothing but prejudice." Richard was still in shock, barely processing the magnitude of his error. I know. I need to fix this somehow. Can you get his contact information? Maybe through the Chiefs organization?" "Sir, with respect, I think the damage is already done. But more importantly, this isn't really about Travis Kelce. This is about how we treat all our customers. How many other people have you judged and dismissed based on their appearance? How many potential sales have we lost because of assumption?" The uncomfortable truth of Jennifer's words hit Richard like a freight train. In his 15 years as manager, how many times had he made similar judgment? How many people had he turned away who might have become valuable customers? What Richard didn't know was that one of the customers who had witnessed the entire incident had recorded the confrontation on his phone. By the time Travis reached his truck, the video was already being uploaded to social media with the hashtag #Kelce kicked out. The caption read, "Just witnessed Travis Kelce get kicked out of Elite Motors in KC for looking like he couldn't afford anything. The disrespect was unreal. This is how they treat people who don't look the part?" Within an hour, the video had thousands of views and hundreds of comments expressing outrage at the treatment Travis had received. Sports bloggers were picking up the story, and local news outlets were beginning to take notice. Richard's phone started ringing, first with calls from corporate headquarters, then from local media outlets wanting statements about the incident. His carefully built reputation was crumbling in real time, and the day was far from over. As Travis drove away from Elite Motors, he wasn't angry. He was disappointed. In 2023, in a progressive city like Kansas City, he had hoped that such blatant discrimination would be a thing of the past. But perhaps, he thought, this experience could become a teaching moment for others. He had no idea that his dignified response to discrimination was about to spark a much larger conversation about judgment, prejudice, and the importance of treating all people with respect, regardless of their appearance. The real story was just beginning to unfold. By 6 a.m. the following morning, Kelce kicked out was trending nationally on Twitter. The video of Travis being escorted out of Elite Motor had exploded across every social media platform, generating millions of views and sparking intense public debate about discrimination and prejudice in high-end retail establishments. ESPN's Sports Center led their morning show with the story, Chiefs star Travis Kelce discriminated against at luxury car dealers. Fox Sports followed with their own segment titled, When Judging by Appearance Goes Wrong. CNN picked up the story for their broader discussion about discrimination in retail space. The response on social media was overwhelmingly supportive of Travis and critical of Elite Motors. Thousands of comments poured in from people sharing their own experiences of being judged or mistreated based on their appearance. This happens more than people think, wrote one user. I was refused service at a high-end store while wearing scrubs after a 16-hour shift as a nurse. They assumed I couldn't afford anything. Respect isn't based on clothing or recognition, added another. Travis handled this with more class than the manager deserved. Patrick Mahomes, Travis's teammate and quarterback, posted his own response. My guy at Kelce, showing character and class, as always. Some people need to learn that respect isn't conditional. Say to Kelce. The Kelce kicked out. At Elite Motors, Richard Morrison arrived at work to find his phone flooded with voicemail from angry customers, corporate executives, and journalists seeking statements. The dealership's Google reviews had plummeted overnight, dropping from 4.2 stars to 1.8 stars, with hundreds of new one-star reviews condemning the treatment of Travis. Discriminatory business practices, read one review. If this is how they treat a Super Bowl champion, imagine how they treat regular people. We'll never shop here again, wrote another former customer. The prejudice displayed was disgusting. Richard's hands shook as he scrolled through the devastating reviews. In less than 24 hours, his dealership's reputation had been destroyed. Corporate headquarters had already called twice, demanding an immediate explanation and action plan. Jennifer Martinez arrived early, dreading what she might find. As one of the few employees who had tried to intervene during the incident, she felt a responsibility to help address the situation, though she wasn't sure how. Mr. Morris, she said, entering his office, I've been thinking about this all night. We need to do more than just apologize. We need to fundamentally change how we operate. Richard looked up from his computer, his face pale and drawn. The corporate office is sending a regional manager today. They're talking about potential termination. 15 years with this company, Jennifer. 15 years. And I might lose everything because of 5 minutes of terrible judgment. Sir, with respect, this isn't about 5 minutes. This is about a pattern of behavior that's finally been exposed. How many other people have we treated this way? How many customers have we lost because we made assumptions based on appearance? Before Richard could respond, his assistant knocked on the door. Mr. Morrison, there's a reporter from Channel 9 News here wanting to interview you about the Travis Kelce incident. And there are about 20 people outside with signs. Richard and Jennifer rushed to the front windows and saw a small but vocal group of protesters holding signs reading, End Retail Discrimination and Respect All Customers. Local news crews were setting up cameras, and more people seemed to be arriving by the hour. This is a nightmare, Richard muttered. But Jennifer saw it differently. Maybe this is an opportunity, she said thoughtfully. Maybe this is our chance to really examine our practice and make meaningful changes. Meanwhile, across town at a competing dealership, Luxury Auto Gallery, manager David Chen was watching the news coverage with intense interest. As soon as he had seen the viral video the night before, He had reached out through mutual contacts to Travis's agent, expressing his dealership's commitment to respectful customer service and inviting Travis to visit whenever he was ready. "This is exactly why we train our staff to treat every customer with equal respect," David told his team during their morning meeting. "You never know who's walking through that door. But more importantly, every person deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of who they are." At noon, Travis posted his first public statement about the incident on his social media account. "Yesterday's experience at Elite Motors was disappointing, but I want to focus on the positive. Thank you to everyone who has shown support. This isn't really about me, it's about how we treat each other. Everyone deserves respect, whether you're a professional athlete, a teacher, a student, or anyone else. Let's use this as a learning opportunity to do better. Respect for all." The post was shared thousands of times within minutes, with comments praising Travis for his mature response and calling for broader changes in how retail establishments treat customers. But what happened next caught everyone by surprise. At 2 p.m. that afternoon, a convoy of luxury vehicles pulled up to Luxury Auto Gallery. Travis emerged from the lead car, followed by several of his teammates, including Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones, and Isaiah Pacheco. Word had spread quickly among the Chiefs players, and they had decided to make a collective statement. David Chen and his staff were ready, greeting the players with genuine respect and professionalism. "Welcome to Luxury Auto Gallery," David said warmly. "We're honored to have you here, and we're committed to providing excellent service to all our customers." The contrast couldn't have been more stark. Within 2 hours, Travis had not only purchased the Cadillac Escalade he had originally wanted, but Patrick Mahomes had ordered a custom Bentley, and 2 other players had made significant purchases as well. "This is how customer service should work," Travis told the gathered media outside Luxury Auto Gallery. "Respectful, professional, and focused on helping customers find what they need. Mr. Chen and his team understand that respect isn't conditional. The total sales from the Chiefs players exceeded $600,000, and the positive publicity for Luxury Auto Gallery was invaluable. David Chen's dealership saw a massive spike in inquiries and appointments, with customers specifically mentioning that they wanted to support a business that treated all people with respect. Back at Elite Motors, Richard watched the news coverage of Travis's successful visit to the competing dealership with a sinking heart. Not only had he lost a significant sale, but he had essentially handed his competition the best advertising opportunity they could have asked for. His phone rang again. This time it was the regional manager. "Richard, this situation has become untenable," the voice on the other end said coldly. "Corporate has decided that immediate action is necessary. We're suspending you pending a full investigation. Security will escort you out this afternoon." As Richard hung up the phone, he realized that his prejudice and poor judgment had cost him not just a sale, but his entire career. 15 years of building a reputation, destroyed in minutes because he had chosen to judge a customer based on appearance rather than character. The story was far from over, but one thing was already clear. Travis Kelce's dignified response to discrimination had sparked a conversation that would extend far beyond one car dealership in Kansas City. 3 days after the viral incident, Elite Motors was in full crisis mode. Corporate executives from the national headquarters had arrived in Kansas City to conduct damage control and investigate what they were calling a catastrophic failure of company value. The numbers were devastating. Online reviews continued to plummet, with the dealership now averaging 1.2 stars across all platforms. More concerning for the business, actual sales had dropped dramatically as customers canceled appointments and refused to visit the showroom. Regional Manager Sarah Peterson sat in the conference room with the remaining staff, reviewing the fallout. "In 48 hours, we've lost 12 confirmed sales, totaling over $800,000, she announced grimly. 6 of our regular customers have explicitly stated they're taking their business elsewhere due to this incident." Jennifer Martinez, who had been promoted to interim manager following Richard Morrison's suspension, spoke up. "Ma'am, I think we need to address the root cause here. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was the result of a culture that prioritized assumptions over customer service." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked. "Mr. Morrison had an unofficial policy of pre-screening customers based on appearance. I've seen him turn away young people, minorities, and anyone who didn't look the part of our typical clientele. The Travis Kelce incident just happened to be caught on video. The revelation sent shockwaves through the room. What had appeared to be one manager's poor judgment was actually a systematic problem that had been allowed to fester for years. Meanwhile, the story had attracted national attention beyond the sports world. The incident became a case study in business schools about the costs of discrimination and the importance of inclusive customer service. Major news outlets were using it as an example of how prejudice could destroy a business in the social media age. Dr. Michael Robinson, a professor of business ethics at Northwestern University, commented on CNN, "The Elite Motors incident demonstrates how quickly discriminatory practices can destroy decades of reputation building. In today's connected world, treating customers with disrespect doesn't just affect that individual transaction. It can devastate an entire business." But the most significant development came from an unexpected source. Travis himself had been quietly working behind the scenes to turn the negative incident into something positive. On Thursday morning, Travis announced the launch of the Respect for All initiative, a program designed to help businesses develop better customer service practice and eliminate discrimination based on appearance, age, or background. "What happened to me at Elite Motors was wrong," Travis said at a press conference outside Arrowhead Stadium. "But instead of just being angry about it, I want to use this experience to help other businesses do better. No one should be judged by how they look or what they're wearing." The initiative would partner with retail establishments, car dealerships, restaurants, and other businesses to provide training on inclusive customer service. Companies that completed the certification program would receive a Respect for All designation that customers could look for when choosing where to spend their money. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours of the announcement, dozens of businesses in Kansas City had inquired about participating in the program. National retailers reached out, expressing interest in expanding the initiative beyond Missouri. David Chen from Luxury Auto Gallery was among the first to sign up. "This program represents exactly what we believe in," he told reporters. "Every customer deserves respect and professional service, regardless of their background or appearance." At Elite Motors, the contrast was stark. While competitors were embracing the positive message of the Respect for All initiative, the dealership was still dealing with the fallout from their discriminatory practice. Richard Morrison, meanwhile, had been terminated from his position following the corporate investigation. Sitting in his home office, he watched Travis's press conference with a mixture of regret and admiration. The young athlete he had so rudely dismissed was now leading a national conversation about respect and inclusion. Rather than seeking revenge or trying to destroy Elite Motors further, Travis was using his platform to create positive change. For the first time since the incident, Richard began to understand the full magnitude of his mistake. This wasn't just about losing a job or damaging a business, it was about the kind of person he had become and the values he had been promoting. That evening, Richard made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He wrote a lengthy letter to Travis, not seeking forgiveness or trying to repair his reputation, but genuinely apologizing and acknowledging how wrong he had been. "Mr. Kelce," the letter began, "I know I have no right to contact you after my inexcusable behavior. I'm not seeking anything from you, not forgiveness, not publicity, not help with my career. I simply need you to know that your response to my discrimination has opened my eyes to behavior I had normalized and justified for years." Richard went on to describe how he had spent years making assumptions about customers based on their appearance, convincing himself that he was being efficient rather than prejudiced. He acknowledged that Travis was probably not the first person he had treated unfairly, just the first whose story had gone viral. "Your Respect for All initiative is exactly what businesses like Elite Motors need," he wrote in conclusion. "I hope other managers learn from my mistakes before they destroy their careers and hurt innocent people the way I did." To Richard's surprise, he received a response 2 days later. Travis had agreed to meet with him privately, not for publicity or to help Richard's situation, but because he believed in the power of education and redemption. The meeting took place at a quiet coffee shop in downtown Kansas City. Travis arrived in casual clothes, jeans and a Chiefs t-shirt, looking remarkably normal for someone who had sparked a national conversation about discrimination. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," Richard said nervously as they sat down. "I know you didn't have to do this. Everyone deserves a chance to learn and grow." Travis replied simply, "What you did was wrong, but if you're genuinely committed to changing, that's what matters now." For the next hour, Richard listened as Travis described his experiences with prejudice throughout his life. Not just the recent incident, but countless smaller moments when people had made assumptions about him based on his appearance, his background, or other superficial factors. "The thing is," Travis explained, "what happened at your dealership wasn't really about me being a famous athlete. It was about basic human dignity. Every person who walks into that showroom or any business deserves to be treated with respect." As their conversation continued, Richard found himself genuinely understanding the impact of his actions for the first time. This wasn't about political correctness or business policy. It was about treating people with basic humanity. When they parted ways, Travis made Richard an offer that would change everything. "If you're serious about making amends, I could use help with the Respect for All program. Someone who understands how discrimination happens from the inside might be valuable in helping others avoid the same mistake." Richard stared at him in disbelief. After everything that had happened, Travis was offering him a chance to be part of the solution, rather than just a cautionary tale. The road to redemption was just beginning. 6 months after the incident that had destroyed his career and sparked a national conversation, Richard Morrison stood before a room full of retail managers and business owners in downtown Kansas City. He was nervous, but determined to share his story as part of Travis Kelce's Respect for All training program. "My name is Richard Morrison," he began, his voice steady but humble. "6 months ago, I was the general manager of Elite Motors. Today, I'm here to tell you about the worst mistake of my professional life and what I learned from it." The audience listened intently as Richard recounted the events of that July afternoon when he had ejected Travis Kelce from his dealership based solely on the athlete's casual appearance. He didn't spare himself in the telling, acknowledging his prejudice and the systematic discrimination he had practiced for years. "I told myself I was being efficient," Richard explained. "I thought I was protecting my time and my salespeople's time by focusing only on serious customers. What I was really doing was denying service to people based on my own biases and assumptions." Travis, who was co-presenting the session, watched with genuine respect as Richard took full accountability for his actions. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. What had started as a man desperately trying to save his career had evolved into someone genuinely committed to fighting the very discrimination he had once perpetrated. The Respect for All initiative had grown beyond anyone's expectation. Over 200 businesses across 15 states had completed the certification program, and inquiries were coming in from companies nationwide. Major retail chains were implementing the training for their entire workforce. "The program isn't just about avoiding viral incidents," Travis explained to the audience. "It's about recognizing that every customer represents not just a potential sale, but a human being deserving of dignity and respect." The success stories were mounting. Businesses that had completed the Respect for All certification were reporting not just improved customer satisfaction, but increased sales and employee morale. Treating all customers with respect, it turned out, was also good for business. Jennifer Martinez, who had been permanently promoted to general manager of Elite Motors, was among those in the audience. Under her leadership, the dealership had undergone a complete cultural transformation. They had been among the first to complete the Respect for All certification, and their reviews had slowly begun to recover. "We had to rebuild from the ground up," Jennifer explained during a panel discussion. "It wasn't enough to just apologize for what happened with Mr. Kelce. We had to examine every aspect of how we treated customers and make fundamental changes." The changes at Elite Motors were comprehensive. They implemented new policies requiring all customers to be greeted within 2 minutes of entering the showroom, regardless of their appearance. Sales staff received extensive training on unconscious bias and inclusive customer service. Most importantly, they created a culture where treating any customer with disrespect was grounds for immediate termination. The results spoke for themselves. While it had taken months to recover from the initial damage, Elite Motors was now seeing record sales and had regained much of its reputation in the Kansas City market. During the lunch break at the training session, Travis was approached by Maria Santos, the owner of a small boutique in downtown Kansas City. "Mr. Kelce," she said, I wanted to thank you personally. Your program helped us realize we were making some of the same mistake, just on a smaller scale. We were unconsciously treating certain customers differently, based on their age or how they dress. The training opened our eyes. Stories like Maria's were common. Business owners who had initially signed up for the certification to avoid negative publicity were discovering genuine benefit to treating all customers with equal respect. The initiative had also attracted academic attention. Harvard Business School was conducting a case study on the program's effectiveness, and several universities were incorporating respect for all principles into their business curricula. But perhaps the most meaningful development came from an unexpected source. 3 months after beginning his work with the initiative, Richard Morrison received a letter from a young woman named Ashley Thompson. "Mr. Morrison," the letter read, "you probably don't remember me, but you kicked me out of Elite Motors 2 years ago when I came in wearing my work uniform from the diner where I was employed. You said I was wasting your time and that people like me didn't belong in a place like that." Richard's heart sank as he read the letter. This was exactly what he had feared, discovering that Travis wasn't the only person he had mistreated. But Ashley's letter continued, "I've been following your work with the Respect for All program, and I wanted you to know that I forgive you. More than that, I'm proud of what you're doing now. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong and work to make things right." The letter went on to explain that Ashley had saved money for 3 years to buy her first car, and when she finally could afford it, she had chosen to visit luxury auto galleries specifically because they had been featured in news coverage about the Respect for All. "I bought my car from a dealership that treats all customers with respect," Ashley wrote. "In a way, your journey helped me find the right place to spend my money." Richard read the letter 3 times before calling Travis to share it. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Richard's discrimination had ultimately led to positive changes that benefited the very people he had once mistreated. "This is what real change looks like," Travis told him over the phone. "It's not just about avoiding mistakes. It's about creating opportunity for people who were previously excluded." As the first anniversary of the incident approached, Travis reflected on the unexpected journey that had begun with a simple attempt to buy a car. What had started as a personally humiliating experience had become a catalyst for meaningful change across the retail industry. The numbers were impressive. Over 500 businesses had completed Respect for All certification. Customer satisfaction scores had improved dramatically across participating companies, and reported incidents of retail discrimination had decreased significantly in certified establishments. But the real success was measured in individual stories like Ashley, people who were now receiving the respectful treatment they deserved, regardless of their appearance or background. On the anniversary date, Travis returned to Elite Motors for a special event. The dealership, now thriving under Jennifer's leadership, was hosting a community celebration of the Respect for All initiative. Richard Morrison was there too, now serving as the program's national training coordinator. "A year ago, this place represented everything wrong with how we treat people," Travis addressed the gathered crowd. "Today, it's proof that businesses can change, people can grow, and communities can come together to create something better." Jennifer Martinez took the microphone next. "We learned that respect isn't just the right thing to do. It's good business. When you treat all customers with dignity, you don't just avoid problems, you create opportunity." Finally, Richard stepped forward to speak. The man who had once epitomized retail discrimination was now leading the fight against it. "I stand here today not proud of what I did, but grateful for what it taught me," he said. "Travis Kelce showed me that real leadership isn't about wielding power over others. It's about lifting others up, even those who have wronged you." As the event concluded, a young man in worn jeans and a faded t-shirt entered the showroom. Without hesitation, 3 sales associates approached him with warm smiles, ready to help him find whatever he might need. The transformation was complete. What had begun as a story of discrimination had become a testament to the power of second chances, personal growth, and the simple but profound impact of treating every person with respect. Travis watched the scene with satisfaction. Sometimes, he reflected, the most important victories happen not on the football field, but in the everyday moments when people choose to see each other's humanity rather than their difference. The Respect for All initiative would continue to grow, but its foundation had been laid in that first difficult moment when a young athlete chose dignity over anger, education over revenge, and hope over cynicism. In the end, Everyone had won, including the man who had originally lost everything.